It is done, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like Chelsea are adding another Enzo to the squad, but this time in the form of the manager. Enzo Maresca looks like he will be joining Chelsea Football Club by the end of this day, or possibly when this video is out, it could be done. And so I thought I'd do a little extra video this week. I'm planning to try and increase the amount of videos I'm doing on the channel to at least 2 and eventually 3, fingers crossed, by the new season. I've wanted to do that for a little while now, and obviously a couple of things haven't gone quite my way. Turns out getting a studio is a little bit harder than it looks. But the big news today, Enzo Maresca, it looks like it's going to be a 5-year deal joining Chelsea. So I thought we'd have a look at it, how he could set up the Chelsea squad, the way he wants to play his football, and just overall how him being manager affects Chelsea Football Club. Now, obviously, the last video on this channel, you guys saw me and Patrick sitting down and talking about the possibility of Chelsea's new managers. And to be honest, I didn't actually really mention Enzo Maresca's name. I kind of put him in that mould, to be quite honest, of the likes of Kieran McKenna, for instance. Chelsea were linked for him for a long, long time. Actually looks like he might be staying at Ipswich as things are looking at the moment. But somebody who has broken through in the last year or so, has done a really good job, worked with kind of a big team previously under the tutelage of another manager. In McKenna's case, that was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. In Enzo's case, it's Pep Guardiola. He was there for a short time. He was part of the youth team there. We'll get onto that in due course. But it looks like the Chelsea board have settled with Enzo Maresca. And that deal, as I said, is about 5 years. However, whilst it's been reported as 5 years, I do reckon with the history of the previous managers and how things have gone so far for Chelsea since the new ownership have taken over, I'm pretty sure there'll be like a 2-year break clause. And so whilst, yes, it might be 5 years, there could be the possibility as well to say if after 2 seasons go their separate ways and save the money that Chelsea may otherwise spend. Now let's take a little deep dive into Enzo Maresca himself. An Italian midfielder, played for some big teams, from English teams like West Brom to even Juventus for a few years. I think he was lining up in midfield alongside Zidane. But his managerial career, that's what I do want to focus on for a second, because he's not playing for Chelsea, he is managing Chelsea. And so he was part of the Man City kind of youth setup for a little while. I think it's their elite development squad is how they call it over there. I think most teams, to be quite honest. And he did a good job. He ended up winning some silverware for them. It was pretty decent. He managed to manage some good players that are in the Chelsea squad right now as well, in Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia. He had links as well, has links as well with Joe Shields, who's obviously at Chelsea now as part of the recruitment team. So we've seen those links there. However, that being said, I do think sometimes you can't look too much into youth football, really, especially the step up to senior football. It is a lot more of a harder situation. There's a lot more pressure, and you have to deal with a lot of things. And so looking into his elite senior managerial career is where we might find out a few more things. Now, after winning silverware with the elite development squad of Man City, he did move to Parma, and it's safe to say things didn't go too well there. He was the manager in 2021 of May, and he wasn't by November that year. So things didn't quite work out there. And actually, when asked about his time at Parma, and this is where I think things are slightly interesting, because you can look at it as well from a Chelsea perspective here. He said, as why he failed to Parma, unfortunately, it didn't go as I had hoped. We signed 14 new players. It was a young team with an international environment. And I think the key word there that I found was quite interesting was young team. Chelsea have one of the youngest teams in the Premier League. And so it'll be very interesting to see whether he can adapt to that. I mean, a young team with Palmer is very different to the young team at Chelsea. You've got the young player of the year in this side. In Cole Palmer, you had Noni Madueke, who was looking really good towards the end of the year. In every single position, the average age is basically like 23 years old, if not younger. And so he will have to kind of get used to that. There aren't too many experienced heads in this Chelsea squad now. Now that Thiago Silva's gone, you're looking at Raheem Sterling as one of the oldest players. Ben Chilwell as one of the oldest players. I mean, Ben Chilwell himself isn't even 30. Now, after his time at Parma, he went back to Manchester City and spent the year as assistant manager to Pep Guardiola. Obviously, Man City did what Man City do. They win the Premier League, and so he did okay in that role, depending on what you make of the assistant manager of Man City. Obviously, Mikel Arteta was also one of them, and now he's doing a pretty good job at Arsenal. But the bigger focusing point is, of course, about Leicester City last year. He became manager of Leicester, signed a 3-year deal after they just got relegated. Obviously, times at Leicester weren't so good. Had a very good squad at Leicester, that's for sure. And got promoted back to the Premier League at the end of this season, winning the Championship. And I think this is where, if you look at Leicester fans, what they say online, it's a little bit interesting, because some of them are, and I'd probably say 70%, 60% of them aren't too bothered that Maresca is leaving. They think he obviously did a great job getting them back up. But in the second half of the season, things weren't as good as the first half. And Leicester have a squad that should have been winning the Championship, to be quite honest. And so it's kind of tough to give praise on something that probably, unless they really screwed things up, should have happened with whoever was in charge, if I'm being quite frank. Leicester have a very talented squad. Obviously, they lost a key player in James Maddison, but they made some good signings, and the player quality they had should have been getting promoted. But there is a 40% of Leicester fans, 40% Leicester fans, that actually are very sad that he's leaving. They thought he did a really good job, got them playing really nice football, and felt that actually that second half that other Leicester fans were criticising was really down to players not taking their chances. If you look at expected goals in the season, Leicester actually overperformed throughout the year, so they didn't do too bad. But in certain games in the second half of the season, these fans felt like it was actually the finishing quality rather than not creating enough chances or the possession-based style of football. Because that is what Maresca wants to do. He, again, has put a quote out to say before, this is how we live and die by the sword of this, possession-based football. We want to have possession-based football. I think if you can look at a lot of goals Leicester have scored this year, and there have been 50 or so passes between it starting and the goal going in the back of the net. Very kind of slow, possession-based football. And from a Chelsea perspective, I think fans will love it if Chelsea are winning. I think that's kind of how Chelsea fans are. They don't really mind too much what the football is like, as long as they are winning games. If, say, results aren't going Chelsea's way and all of a sudden they are having high possession-based football, which Chelsea have had for the last couple of years now, but not managed to beat teams maybe that they should be beating, then things will, I think, get a little bit interesting, because I think Chelsea fans there might start to get a little bit vocal about wanting to just win games rather than just keeping possession. There's this tag sometimes around this possession style of football that it can be a little bit boring, slow paced, wanting to build up slowly, left to right, right to left, back to the centre back. And Chelsea fans, as I said before, have kind of moaned about this with other managers doing this style of thing. So results, very, very important. And that's just in general. I think even the board level, top 4 next season is a kind of minimum standard that needs to be expected, or at least Champions League qualification for Chelsea next year. I mean, the finances alone kind of need that to try and make sure that Chelsea will be okay in the long run. Let's get into the actual way that he wants to play his football. I think sometimes people want to kind of hear that Maresca plays a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 or whatever. But really nowadays, that's not how managers kind of do things. I think if you were to put it down on paper, it is a 4-3-3. But really, it changes depending on the opposition that they're playing. I think players know, depending on how a certain player in opposition is going forward or positioning himself in the midfield, what they're meant to be doing. I think that's quite a crucial thing that Maresca wants his players to be kind of doing, adaptable and understanding that, okay, if the defender is pushing into midfield, then you need to be dropping back and kind of covering him. But the big thing for him is, of course, these inverted fullbacks. You can watch a great video on YouTube on Coach's Voice where he goes into this himself in a lot more detail. But overall, he wants one fullback coming into midfield and the other one normally dropping in to make kind of a back three sometimes in defence. And whether that means a team has a lot more attackers, then another midfielder kind of drops in as well to make it a 5 in defence. Or if they aren't, then they can be just a 3 at the back as well. And with Chelsea, we saw this kind of happen with Pochettino towards the end of the season. But yeah, one of the things that I think we saw Poch kind of find a bit of success with was Cucurella dropping in and inverting into the midfield. And again, kind of doing this 3 at the back with Cucurella joining midfield, helping Caicedo out. And we saw a lot of success towards the last month of the season with this. Cucurella can do this. I wouldn't be too surprised. Like Reece James could do this exceptionally well. He's somebody that I think people mentioned a few times could always become a DM one day. He's always managed to do really well at right centre-back and a 3-back when he's there. He's been able to do right wing-back really well, full-back really well. If Reece James is fit, like, it wouldn't surprise me if you saw him play DM. He did that for Wigan on his loan season there when he was playing, and he did exceptionally well. The one thing you sometimes think is that, okay, if you put in Reece James there and he's having to be a little bit more reserved, does that mean you're losing a little bit more of him kind of going down that flank? That's up for debate, and that's something that I'm sure we would end up talking about if that happens. Another part of Maresca's important play as well is having this goalkeeper play out from the back. It's where I think Chelsea actually may end up doing a little bit of business in the window. I thought previously if Poch was staying, Chelsea might not have done this and would have kind of kept with Sanchez, and maybe if they didn't sell Kepa and also Petrovic. I think Petrovic did really well this year. There were times where he played exceptionally well and then times where he was a little bit poor, but also kind of to be expected from a keeper in his debut season in the Premier League. I think overall he did absolutely fine. But with the balls at their feet, it's not their number one thing. I think that's something that he does really want from his goalkeeper, to help them with passing out from the back, to not just hoof the ball up top and lose possession. He very much lives by that if we have the ball, then the other team can't score. Though, all you have to do is look at the Leicester game last time when Chelsea played Leicester, and Disasi might change your mind on that. But overall, that is, of course, the idea, the mantra. If we have possession, then the other team can't score a goal, and we can also have a better opportunity of doing that. But you need your goalkeeper for that. That is also a tough position to fill as well, because I think right now the goalkeeper market isn't necessarily overloaded with exceptional goalkeepers. I think you've obviously got the Valencia boy who's currently looking for a new club as well, and a lot of clubs are after him. He's not necessarily exceptional with his feet, a decent shot stopper though, it has to be said, but I think he kind of prefers to go long with his passes rather than short. Funnily enough, I've seen Marcin Bolka actually linked back to a return to Chelsea. He's at Nice at the moment. I think he's also looking kind of to make the step up now as well, to a bigger club, and he's a possibility of a return there. Again, a solid shot stopper, tall, can claim crosses really well, okay with his feet. That's the thing, people can get better with this stuff, but I think if you watch what Leicester were doing last year, like, it's high pressured stuff, super high pressured stuff, and it wouldn't shock me if, this is a position where you need to get it right in order to really help out with not losing possession. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we need to talk about his experience here with some of the Chelsea kind of board and squad already. Cole Palmer is a big factor here. He was Chelsea's best player of the season by a mile, and there's a lot of potential for him to do that next season and the season after and the season after. He is an exceptional quality, and so it's good to have someone that knows this and is used to this and has obviously done well with him before. We've got to remember as well, Cole Palmer during this time would have spent time in the first team as well, so he might not have been with him every single day, but when he went back as an assistant manager, he would have also been using him there, and so they know each other. Again, tough to say to exactly what level and how Cole kind of looks at him and stuff, and things have changed since they both got older, and obviously Cole Palmer's now had a full season in the Premier League where he's really, really impressed, but one of the main things is about trying to take it to the next level, and it's going to be a lot tougher now with a squad where everyone doesn't quite know exactly how Maresca's going to play. He might want to influence another certain position, but Cole Palmer is a key element to this, and I'd like to think he will realise this and try to kind of elevate him towards that. Chelsea have a lot of right wingers, I think, at the moment / in future, and that's not to say that Cole Palmer is a right winger. We can see him playing that kind of 10 role as well, but sometimes he is the guy that we need to be elevating, maybe then asking him to constantly be tracking his man back and such. And so, yeah, Cole Palmer's experience there, good, tick for me that. The other kind of thing, as I mentioned, that kind of fits within the Cole Palmer category is the youth, the inexperience of this squad. They just had their first year really gelling together and having at least an okay season in the end. They're going to have European football next year, which is a real good plus, I think, to kind of have more game time to improve and get momentum. And it's going to be the Conference League as well now, so looking to go far in that, all positive things. But Maresca, within the first week of when he's got all the players back, needs to be kind of getting it right, not annoying anyone, not kind of upsetting the apple cart. per se. I think that's one thing that Poch did super, super well, as you saw by him leaving, how players reacted. People are going to be kind of interested to see what he does, and again, who his favourites may be, and trying to make sure that people are happy. Chelsea have a big squad. Last year, we got a lot of injuries, so essentially people played because they had to play. But next year, if Chelsea, fingers crossed, don't have as many injuries, how is he going to do when players start maybe asking about wanting to play more? When Nkunku is fully fit, and say Mudyrk is fully fit, and Jackson's there, and Madueke's there, and Cole Palmer's there, suddenly there's a lot more players to be adding to your squad. Not to mention, Angelo, who's on loan last year, the youngsters that you've got coming from South America, and Kendry Paez, and of course Willian Gustavo. Like, the numbers start adding up pretty quickly. Omari Hutchinson coming back from Ipswich, who had a great year there. The numbers really do start to add up, and I think you've obviously got to try and please all of them, because they all have quite high potentials, that's for sure. I just realised then as well, I forgot to mention Raheem Sterling. I forgot to mention Carney Chukwuemeka. Like, this is an important thing here that actually Poch managed to do pretty well. Again, kind of the injuries helped him out a little bit, but still. And so Romeo Lavia, another guy as well, I guess, for the midfield, trying to keep him happy when he's now back from full fitness. So all this stuff is going to be a tough thing that, to be quite honest, wasn't really having to be dealt with last season. However, I think it's worth putting a little bit of positivity on this, because I feel like the consensus at the moment is people don't quite know what to expect. This is a manager who we don't know too much from. His experiences in Italy as a manager weren't that great, and his time at Leicester, whilst winning the league, seems to be having a lot of negative connotations from fans reviewing his time there in the end. But one of the nice things, I think, about having a manager like this when they come in is kind of the expectation that you have no expectation. That can be really, really good. Of course, it can go wrong, and you can have what happened with Graham Potter. I do understand that, but let's not think in that way for now anyway. Let's think positively, because this is somebody who may end up flourishing here and enjoying the fact that he's got a squad here that he can mould into whatever way he wants and whatever way suits them best. He's got players, he's going to have a fully fit Enzo, that is now available to use properly. And apparently that's something that he impressed the board with, about the importance of trying to get the most out of him, because when he is fit and firing, this is an incredible player creatively. He seems to know as well how to set up a defence. At least last season he did. And again, when you look at him talking about the way he wants to play his football, there is definitely a notion towards his defence about the importance of it. And I think in the Premier League, it's ridiculously important. One thing I think Poch did really well last season was sort out the attack. One thing that I thought really was poor was the defence, and that's from set pieces and all that side of things coming in. Now Chelsea have a set piece coach coming in, and so like on that front, things should hopefully get better in an attacking sense and a defensive sense, but also open play. Like, Chelsea made a lot of sloppy errors last year, partially due to kind of the way we were playing our football, I felt like. Some of it was through literal, genuine error. And that, again, happens with youngsters and young players. But it does seem like there is an idea there on how to defend and how he wants to defend. I think that's quite important, or that's super important if you want to have a sustainable Premier League season. You only have to think back to how that last good month happened with Chelsea, and a couple of results go the other way. Brighton, which could have, the Bournemouth game on the last day of the season, like, they go the other way, and I think the kind of end of season positivity that everyone had might not have been, to be quite honest. How are Chelsea going to line up is a big question as well. So I think generally we can kind of expect whatever the goalkeeper situation is, whoever it is, say it is a Kepa, say it's a Petrovic, say it's a Sanchez, say it's new guy 2.0, right? That's what I can kind of put it there, into one of those guys. I think you're going to see Chelsea kind of line up in a 4-3-3, and you have in a fully fit squad, a Reece James at right back. If he, fully fit, eventually, if Fafana at right centre-back, left centre-back, Colwill. Again, these are interchangeable. I'll put it on screen. Interchangeable with other guys who are able to play there. Your left-back, I think, is going to probably be someone like Cucurella for now, unless they go out and maybe get an improvement, or Ben Chilwell. But Ben Chilwell's maybe a little bit different to be playing this kind of inverted role, so maybe he would be kind of slotting in to more of a left centre-back, and that's where maybe that fits Cucurella a little bit better. That, I think, position is up for debate. The whole Ian Maatsen scenario as well, he might end up wanting to keep him. Who knows? But Chelsea probably do need to sell some players, so it wouldn't shock me if that ends up being Ian Maatson and a few others. Even Trevor Chalobah, I think he should be staying. He's an option for that right centre-back role as well. He could be off as well. Then you're going to be having your two kind of midfielders. I think your central midfielder deepest is Caicedo, and you said Enzo Caicedo, is Caicedo. Then you're going to have one in Enzo. And of course, I think you're going to have your Cole Palmer in this role here, kind of just in front of the midfield, but kind of slightly towards the right wing. Right wing, God knows, if Chelsea get Elise, maybe it's him. But for now, we're going to put Madueke there. And then left wing will have Nkunku, and up top we'll have Nicholas Jackson. I also think Jackson and Nkunku can probably swap round. There's a few interchangeable parts here. Mudyrk's obviously on the bench and such. But this is kind of what it would look like on paper. I think defensively, you end up seeing it more like this. And you have someone like Reece James possibly coming in, or if it's Cucurella coming in, Reece James kind of going to a right centre-back, or even possibly it flipping round and him pushing forward, whatever it works out on that front. And then even in attacking-wise, maybe something like this, where you really are kind of getting the full fledged of your attacking force here and kind of getting the best out of, say, a Reece James if he's pushing forward, or whatever it might be from one of your fullbacks if they kind of do operate into that midfield role. Because whilst Reece James is amazing at kind of overlapping, he's definitely not too bad from back there as well. This is what I kind of think you call the Trent area too, and I think he can do that to a decent degree as well. You might also see kind of Enzo operating in this area. I think generally I can see the maths behind it. Not to say he might kind of change things, and football's all about adaptation, changing to your opposition, and so you'll see kind of different defensive shapes and whatever it might be. But overall, this is what you're probably looking at Chelsea's starting lineup. Now let's move on to expectations for the season. I think essentially, short-wise, it can't be worse than last year. And I mean that on a serious sense here, in terms of Chelsea can't finish any lower than 6th. They have to go far in the Cups, as they did, and in Europe, in the Conference League. If it was the Europa League, there might be a little bit more of an understanding, but they have to go far in the Conference League. And this is where, again, man management of players and keeping people happy needs to be used here, if everyone is fit, of course. But also in the Premier League, if you're making a decision like this and kind of getting rid of Poch, who, as I said, got Chelsea to where they were, then it has to be doing better than the next year with this manager. And it's a lot of pressure to put on someone. A lot of pressure to put on someone who hasn't managed a team that are fighting for this kind of place, a Champions League place, whilst also fighting in Europe. I was going to say consistently, but also fighting in Europe this season as well. Last year he had as I said, a good year with Leicester, won the league, but the second half of the season, people thought they dropped off a bunch. And so this is a Chelsea side that is by nowhere near the finished article, and people are going to be looking at consistently with a lot more pressure and a lot more kind of media obligations you've got to be doing, and a lot more stress you're going to have consistently, and a lot more travelling going to be doing. This is all a big task to put on someone that's never experienced this before in terms of managing. Okay, he would have been there when he was with Pep, and that makes sense to a degree, and you might be a little bit more used to it than you were with, say, Graham Potter when he was there. But it's still a really tough thing when you are now the person dealing with it every day. But yeah, if he can end the season with a cup in some way, whether that be Conference League or FA Cup or Carabao Cup, and finish in the top 4, every Chelsea fan would bite your hand off that right now. If not a little bit less, to be quite honest, even if it's finishing in 5th place possibly. And I think the other thing is progression then on the pitch. If we have got rid of a manager who started to find a little bit of something that was working towards the end of the year, and we want to be playing this attacking possession-based philosophy football that the ball keeps saying, then we need to see that. We need to see that towards this season. And okay, it might not happen in the first game. It might not happen for the first 10 games. But by January, by December, Chelsea need to be having this style of play, this philosophy, in order for, I think, us to kind of look at it and think, okay, well, this was a good move here. Because that's what people are going to be doing now for the whole of next season. How is this move compared to when Poch was there, and is this better than when Poch was there? And if this one, Maresca, this being Enzo Maresca, is always kind of just coming out on top, then people will be fine. But that is very tough to do, because by the end of it, Poch did have a little bit of shining light towards his name. If he'd kind of been let go after the Arsenal result, whatever it might have been, people probably wouldn't have said a thing, and the expectations would have been probably a little bit lower. But that's not how football works. Chelsea ended up getting something towards the end of the season, and now they're going to have to try and improve on it. Okay, and finally, I think it's also worth mentioning the academy. I think a lot of hardcore Chelsea fans, and not to disrespect anyone by saying that this isn't them, but I think a lot of hardcore Chelsea fans want the academy to be a part of this. Who knows what's going to happen in terms of Gallagher, in terms of Djellab, but Chelsea playing in the Conference League should afford minutes to a lot of their academy guys that had very good years last year. Like if Hutchinson stays, he should be playing in that tournament, if not in the Premier League anyway, because of how good he was with Ipswich. If Tyreek George stays and doesn't go out on loan, like he should be getting some of these minutes as well. Guys who have exceptional talent and exceptional potential, but they need to start playing senior minutes in order to kind of see where they get to. Otherwise, you end up with the kind of Cole Palmer situation yourself that Man City had. And that's not to say that these guys will definitely reach to that level, because obviously that's a huge claim. But they do have bags of potential, and you're only going to see it if they're playing senior football. So if they've not gone out on loan, you're going to have to make sure you get the academy incorporated. And I think that's also a really quick way for him to get a lot of fans on side. So there we have it. Enzo Maresca. Tough job. Really tough job. And I do feel for him in the fact that, like, he's going into this with, like, it's not like a neutral playing run, I feel like he is kind of slightly below what kind of fans were maybe wanting or expecting. And so that's tough. That's definitely tough. But, like, Thomas Tuchel was in that, I think, when he joined, and obviously he went on to do what he did. Not saying he's going to be Thomas Tuchel. And even Poch, I guess, to a degree did. And by the end of it, started to get some people on side. But as for Maresca, like, I think this is the kind of beauty and the scary bit of it. It could be anything. It could be here. It could be down here. Maybe the first season could be just about here. And to be honest, that might not be a bad thing, as long as it's fighting towards the top end of the table, that being for fourth place anyway. And so, yeah, overall, I think we'll see. Like, it's tough for me to say whether it's a good move or a bad move, because right now we just don't really have a good idea. We've got one season of pretty good championship football and like a poor 4 months of obviously with Parma and Italian football. And so, like, it's hard to kind of be like, oh, well, this is exactly what we're going to see, because you genuinely don't know. And, like, he might adapt, he might see the squad and think, actually, let's do this, actually, let's do that. And so pre-season will be really, really interesting, and we can kind of go from there. But Enzo Maresca, good luck to you, mate. I'm sure you will need it. But that is today's video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it and how Chelsea might set up under Enzo Maresca. It's going to be a really interesting season, and even a couple of months beforehand, and obviously with sales and coming ins and whatever. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I'm going to be trying to put out a couple of videos now a week, 2 videos out a week. One with, of course, Patrick and the gang, and then probably one on my own as well, covering all sorts from, you know, Chelsea's future and whatever it might be, but also Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, you name it, tier lists, all that good stuff. Then I'll be doing that right here. So if you have enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment below. How do you think the future of Chelsea is going to go? How do you think about Enzo Maresca's future will go? And if you are a Leicester fan, let me know how he has been and what we should be expecting. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you guys very, very soon. Bye.